Section 1. You will hear a man telephoning to ask for information about swimming lessons. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6 on page 2. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Hello, City Swim School.
Oh, hello. I wanted to ask about swimming lessons. That's in a class, not individual.
Right. Well, we do group lessons at various levels. To start off with, we have what we call the Water Babies class.
The first class is called Water Babies, so babies has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Hello, City Swim School.
Oh, hello. I wanted to ask about swimming lessons. That's in a class, not individual.
Right. Well, we do group lessons at various levels. To start off with, we have what we call the Water Babies class. That's for babies of 3 months and over.
Really? As young as that?
Yes, that's really the best time to start.
Right. Well, we do have a baby, so I'll make a note of that. What do they actually do in the lessons?
Well, the main aim is just to familiarise them with the water so they feel at ease there. They get the children to enjoy themselves. They have lots of toys and things they can use to play with in the water.
Right. And how much do the lessons cost?
They're held on Tuesday mornings, and each lesson costs £3.80. It's not really a course as such.
OK. Well, I'll talk to my wife about that. But I was actually ringing about lessons for me.
OK. So, are you a beginner?
Not exactly, but I'm not very good.
Well, the beginners' classes are really for people who don't have any experience of swimming. They aim to teach you techniques for breathing in the water, and they get you to do things like put your head underwater and open your eyes.
OK, I can do that.
And by the end of the course, they aim to have you swimming 5 metres.
I think I can probably just about do that.
OK, so you'd be better in the intermediate class then. That's where you learn the main swimming strokes. Front stroke, backstroke, and so on.
What about diving?
Yes, they'd teach you how to do that. And you'd also do some underwater swimming.
Not with a tank or anything?
Oh no, not scuba, just ordinary underwater swimming. And in the intermediate course you also look at water safety, both in the pool and when swimming in other places.
OK. Well, that sounds the right level for me, I think. So how much does that cost?
£61 for a course. That's 10 lessons.
Can you tell me a bit more about the class? How many people would there be in it?
Well, the intermediate class is usually around 8 to 10. That's what we aim at. Though occasionally it might go up to 12.
OK, that sounds quite a reasonable size, not too many. And the class is for adults, is it?
Yes.
OK. And just out of interest, is there an advanced class?
Yes, they focus on developing more efficient swimming techniques and on working on your speed. And they also prepare you for competitive swimming.
OK. No, I think I'd want to start with the intermediate one, really.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, You have some time to look at questions 7 to 10 on page 3. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
Now, is there anything special I need to know?
Well, the classes are on Tuesdays, and the first lesson is on January the 13th, so you need to register before then. January the 8th is the latest, but it's filling up quickly, so I'd do it straight away. You can pick up a form here, or get one off the internet, and classes are at 7:30 p.m.
Right. Then I just roll up with my swimming trunks. Do I have to bring my own towel?
That's right. We provide all participants with a swimming hat, though.
Oh, I don't usually wear one.
Well, we do insist on it, actually. It helps the instructor to identify you, apart from anything else. Oh, and don't forget you need a 20p coin for the locker.
Oh, okay. Right, well, I've been meaning to do this for ages. I really need to get some more exercise, and everyone says swimming is good for your health.
Yes, and a lot of people find it improves their confidence too. And of course it could save your life, or even someone else's.
That's right. Okay, well, thanks very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Part 2. You will hear part of a radio program in which a successful businessman is advising listeners on how to become a self-made millionaire. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Everybody dreams of becoming a millionaire one day. So we asked Arthur Knowles, who made his millions in the plumbing business, to give the budding entrepreneurs among you a few tips on how to make your first million. Arthur, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Sue.
So, Arthur, what advice do you have for our listeners?
Well, one thing I've heard people say is that when you're starting up a business, you can't afford to make mistakes. Well, I believe in the old saying, a person who never made a mistake never made anything. You can't really predict when you'll make mistakes, and you have to look at them as a positive experience, and one that means you won't make the same mistake again. You need to be able to cope with the world of business. But according to recent American business school studies, believing in yourself isn't enough by itself to guarantee success. Confidence can be a good thing, but a person can have too much confidence. And people who try to learn to be confident by buying those How to Succeed books are just wasting their time. The advice given in these American studies was that being a successful entrepreneur comes down to having the right attitude. It's no good getting depressed every time something goes wrong. Always keep your goals in mind and never give up. And don't listen to all the people around you who say, "Oh, this will never work." One thing I've learned in business is that you don't have to be an expert in everything, like marketing, for example. When I started my business, I tried to do it all myself, but I soon realized that although I knew everything there was to know about plumbing, I didn't have much idea about how to sell my ideas. So, I got someone who knew more about this to take care of the marketing side of things for me. And as for leadership, well, you've got to be someone your workers look up to because you've been seen to make the right decisions. You have to be able to control people, but listen to them at the same time. Some people are driven to make their companies successful, but that too often leads to a ruthless approach. Then there's the question of taking risks, even calculated ones. I personally feel it's actually better to tread carefully when it comes to taking short-term risks. You need a degree of vision, certainly, but it's easy to get carried away by your desire to increase profits. And if things go wrong, you can end up losing more than you gain.
Before you hear the rest of the program, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
So, if you have a great idea for a business, what should you do next?
Well, the first thing to ask yourself is whether there's a need for your product or service. Can you cater for people's needs better than existing companies? You don't need to worry about whether it's original or not, because there isn't always enough of a demand for completely new ideas. And the second thing to ask yourself is not what colour should the packet be or how much should it cost, but do I care enough about this idea to dedicate the next 10 years of my life to it? Because realistically, that's how long it will take.
Tell us how you got started, Arthur. How do you explain your early success?
Well, I started my business just as the economy was going into a recession, which wasn't the best time, and I was lucky to survive, especially as the banks weren't being particularly supportive to small businesses at that time. If I'd listened to the business advice I was given back then, I'd never have got started. My strengths were that I knew I could provide a better service than my competitors, who really hadn't spotted the opportunities that were out there, and that my wife had a good job and was able to pay the household bills while I was getting the company on its feet. The first couple of years were very tough, but I knew I would make it eventually.
OK, now we're going to take some calls from listeners.
That is the end of Part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 2.
Now turn to Section 3. Section 3. You will hear a tutor called Dr. Harris and a student called Lisa discussing Lisa's postgraduate research project on the role of health visitors. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hi, Lisa. Good to see you again, especially since you've chosen to do your master's with us.
Well, I enjoyed my first degree in nursing, and I decided I want to become a health visitor. You know, someone who promotes health and well-being and is part of a team within a community, getting out and meeting people of all ages. So that's why I chose this research project.
Excellent. And your focus, the role of a health visitor in the community, is spot on. But at this stage, you need to keep an open mind so you can respond to initial findings once you get underway.
From what I read, the role seems to vary quite considerably.
Yes, some health visitors tend to focus on liaising with family doctors. Others work independently with new patients. The work of health visitors in future is most likely to rely on the relationship between these roles, and I think that would be an interesting angle for you to pursue at some stage.
Yes, what I really want to impact is the problem of physical development checks, which start with babies when they are only a few days old.
Right.
Another area which I am thinking of investigating is the monitoring of nurseries, which is currently under review. And there is the issue of preschools, at what age they should take very young children. I thought I'd also include childminders, the individuals in the area of Haines that might not be qualified but look after young children.
That's an area I'd stay clear of as it's very complex.
Okay, will do. Anyway, I'd also like to make a short film about a few children.
A good idea. But it will depend on building up a relationship with one or two health visitors willing to introduce you to a family. An opportunity like that would allow you to look at how young children begin to form words, for example.
And peer relationships between children, as well as the ways in which they relate and play with each other, especially when they are around 2 to 3 years old, although early use of language is my main interest.
Okay. But there are other topic areas I'd like you to consider before we finalize the content and structure of your research. An equally important area is the child's home environment and the effect of a newborn baby.
Right.
You need to consider the impact of this on the parents, particularly if the family lives in poor economic circumstances. Of course, the additional expense could be a worry, especially if there are other children. Certainly, all those matters are very sensitive and not necessarily easy to detect. There's plenty of help available, but many people often feel too proud to ask for it.
This is the area where I will need to be familiar with family law, isn't it?
Very much so. By all means, be aware of the medical conditions, and you also need to consider social practice. But you'll find that in most circumstances, you will have to refer to the law to understand how far a health visitor can intervene.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Now, your book list. I'm glad to see worldwide health care policies tops your list.
Well, I wasn't sure how relevant it would be, but it's a new edition, so the information is current.
Yes, some of it may not be relevant, but it's important to keep abreast of developments in other countries, which may inform our own government's legislation.
I understand. What about supporting vulnerable families? It's not as costly as some of the other books on my list.
It's an excellent buy considering the price, even though it does leave a few things out.
I've already ordered Health Visitors and Child Protection. I hope that was right.
Well, it's very expensive, but it's a sound investment, and there aren't many textbooks which cover as much detail as this. It will be a valuable reference even if the style is occasionally boring.
And what about the future of health visiting? I'm unsure how useful it will be.
Useful in a utilitarian sense? Probably not. but it's stimulating in the way the writer considers what health visiting could be like in a perfect world. I'd suggest dipping into it to discover the improvements which could be made if money were no object.
And resources for health visitors?
Strangely enough, it's not as helpful as the title suggested. It offers a huge variety of activities and strategies which are great when working with young children, but they're presented in a rather haphazard way, and the index isn't much use either. Be very careful when using it.
Okay. That is the end of Section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 4. You will hear a lecturer talking on the topic of sustainability. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40 on page 7. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
This week's lecture on a scientific topic of current general interest is on sustainability. The term sustainability is not new. It was first coined in 1987 in a report for the United Nations World Commission on Environment and Development. Since then, however, the term has been applied to everything from cars to agriculture and even economics. My specific focus, in fact, derives from this problem. I want to analyze what seems to me to be the confusion that surrounds sustainability. That UN document defines sustainable development as development that allows both the present and all future generations to meet their needs. Here is the first myth. Sustainability is not simply about the environment, which may come as a surprise to you. In fact, the original definition says nothing about it at all. Sustainability is not about protecting the world around us. The original focus was on finding ways to help poor nations catch up with richer nations, which primarily meant giving them similar rights to natural resources, water, food, energy, the things that many of us take for granted. The consequence and ultimate goal was improving living standards for all. Another myth is that sustainability is a synonym for green, as in green movement, green products, etc., although there is some overlap between the terms. Green suggests a preference for natural living, for example, when you go shopping. Products marketed as green imply the absence of high technology and mass manufacturing processes. Those groups who campaign for sustainability, we can call them the lobby for sustainability, acknowledge that the situation is desperate. The main problem, they state correctly, is time. With 6 billion people on the planet now, and 1 billion more expected in the next 30 years, only technology will be able to provide everyone with an acceptable and safe lifestyle. Electric cars, Wind turbines and solar cells are key examples of this. They make great use of renewable resources while emitting fewer noxious chemicals. Nuclear power, too, is something the sustainability lobby has come to accept, unlike most greens. And here's the third myth. It concerns the role of technology. Technology is not rejected as evil, but we should not overemphasize the role of technology either. Take electric cars, for example. Researchers are currently working on plans to electrify the world's car fleet. New technology is currently being developed to make better batteries, giving longer performance. But a better way of thinking is perhaps to have battery stations for drivers to use on roads. When the battery is getting low, they simply swap the old one for a fully charged one. In other words, new business thinking, not new technology, for a sustainable future. There are similarities in agriculture, where knowledge can be more productive than new technology. Agriculture uses up about 3/4 of the world's water. Some crops are very thirsty and require a lot of water. So many farmers who believe in sustainability are now planting crops like sunflowers and wheat instead of corn, which are happy with much less water. In terms of water consumption, one of the biggest problems is that our diet is changing. As countries develop and people become richer, they aspire to a diet with more meat. Now, admittedly, most of the new births that will take our population to over 6 billion are going to be born in countries with largely vegetarian diets. However, most of them will be born in the city, and this is where water consumption is highest. That introduces the topic for next week's lecture, and we will be discussing.
That is the end of Section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.